Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yud Tes, Daf 19 of Masechta Beitzah. Today's Daf starts off with what does it start off with? Right, talking about taking things to the mikveh on Erev Yom Tov Ben Hashmoshes. Can you do that? So we're going to start off with that question. Then we're going to move on to a new Mishnah Machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding which korbanos are you allowed to offer on Yom Tov. I think it's a pretty interesting Machlokas. I hope you will as well. Actually, I'm sure you will as well. You better. Let's go weiter. So we're on Daf Yud Tes Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the top. Taner Rabban Klish Nidma Me'erev Yom Tov. So if you have a vessel and it becomes tamei before Yom Tov, okay, ein matbilin also ben hashmoshes. So you're not allowed to throw it into the mikveh, to tovel it in the mikveh during ben hashmoshes before Yom Tov starts. What's of course ben hashmoshes? Ben hashmoshes is obviously it's machlokas, but practically speaking nowadays it's essentially the time between Shkia and Tzeisa Kochavim, when it's Safek Yom, Safek Laila. We're not sure if it's technically day, in which case it's still Erev Yom Tov, in which case it's no problem to be putting it, toveling in the mikveh, or if it's nighttime, which means it's already Yom Tov. And if it's Yom Tov, as we said, you're not allowed to tovel kelim, right? Both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel say that you're not allowed to tovel kelim on Yom Tov. We gave 4 reasons why not. So if it's bein hashmoshes, safek yom, safek laila, we don't want you to be toveling anything in the mikveh at that time. So again, Taner Rabbanan Kli Shnidma Me'erev Yom Tov, if you have a vessel that becomes tamei already from Erev Yom Tov, ein matbilin also bein hashmoshes, we do not tovel it in the mikveh during bein hashmoshes between Erev Yom Tov and Yom Tov itself. Reb Shimon Shazuri Omer, says the very, very holy Reb Shimon Shazuri, Av b'cholin matbilin also. That's very interesting. Mipnei shetzarech harev shemesh. Oh, interesting. So it says Reb Shimon Shazuri that even during the week, you would not bring a vessel to tovel a vessel during bein hashmoshes because it needs harev shemesh. Now, we had seen this concept taka yesterday, lemaise, that in reality, I guess, if you have a vessel that's tamei, it doesn't need harev shemesh for chulin, right? Of course, what's harev shemesh? Harev shemesh means that it has to sort of, after going to the mikveh, it then has to have sunset, right? Now, I think the first daf of all of Shash says that Tzeisa Kochavim is essentially. Is that what we said? That was that the whole point of like the first part of Daf Shash, right? That if you have Harev Shemesh, which is Tzeisa Kochav, right? That's the whole point, right? Mei Masai Kohen Nishma Ba'arvin Misha Shekwana Nichnason Lecho B'Trumason. We say that's Tzeisa Kochavim, and that's Harev Shemesh. They could then eat truma, right? Is that correct? I hope. Otherwise, I'm in big trouble. Maybe I'm in big trouble. Anyways, so the concept of Harev Shemesh means that after you go to the mikveh, you then have to have, it has to then become nighttime after you've gone to the mikveh. Now, if you go to the mikveh, if you tovel a kli in the mikveh, bein hashmashos, during bein hashmashos, then it might already be night. Well, then if we need Harev Shemesh, well, you missed the boat for tonight because it's already night, so you have to wait till tomorrow night. So we say, so it says Reb Shimon Shazuri that, so let's take a step back for a second. So we said yesterday that when it comes to chulin, when it comes to non-consecrated items, not truma, not kodshim, just regular old stuff, so it doesn't matter. Immediately after you tovel the vessel in the mikveh, you can already start putting your food in it. I don't know, you have cashews that you bought at Shuk Machne Yehuda, you could already put it in the vessel that you just put in the mikveh. That's no problem. But when it comes to truma, when it comes to kodshim, it would require harev shemesh. And as Rashi points out on today's daf, the first wide line of Rashi towards the end says, "V'kohen askinan demishtamish b'truma." And we're talking here about a kohen who uses his vessels to put truma in it. and therefore it would require Harav Shemesh, and therefore, says Reb Shimon Shazuri that even during the week, we don't want somebody to be tovel something in the mikveh during Bein Hashmashos, because if it requires Harav Shemesh, if it requires, for it to become night after you've already put it in the mikveh, well, that is, because Bein Hashmashos is Safek Yom, Safek Laila, we say just avoid it because it's possible that you've already missed the boat, and just avoid the situation, says Reb Shimon Shazuri. And again, we're talking about a Kohen who would be using this vessel for Truma. Okay, sounds very nice. Wait, what's going on here? I'm sitting on like a blanket, and then like my ankle is bothering me, and then, interesting. Interesting. Okay. I can't tell if something just sort of got stuck to my heel, or if I had like a scab on my heel or something, but why would I have a scab on my heel? Let's go weiter. Let's go weiter. So Reb Shimon Shazuri, Omer Av B'cholim Matbilin also Mipnei Shetzarech Harav Shemesh. So says Reb Shimon Shazuri that even during the week we don't take things to the mikveh during Ben Hashmashos, because if we're talking about a Kohen who takes things to the mikveh, who puts truma into this vessel, he's going to require Harav Shemesh, and Ben Hashmashos already it's Safek Yom, Safek Laila, so avoid the situation. Very nice. V'Tanakama Lo by Harav Shemesh. Now, Frekte Gemara, 1 second. According to the Tanakama seems to not have a problem with taking something to the mikveh during Bein Hashmashos. So, Tanakama must also agree that a vessel that's going to be used for Truma is going to need Harav Shemesh. So why is only Reb Shimon Shazuri concerned about that during the week? It says Rava that he found the chevre from the Beis HaMedrash, and as Rashi points out, Devei Rav l'talmidim shebe Beis HaMedrash. We're not talking about the students of Rav who were learning the Beis HaMedrash of Rav. We're talking about the whoa, that was chazak. Somebody just closed the door. Stark. Where are we? So Rabbanan Devei Rab is talking about the students of the yeshiva. Okay, very nice. The Yasser v'Kamer, and they were saying, "V'machshavtu nikeres mitoch ma'isov kamiflagei," that actually what the Tanakame and Reb Shimon Shazuri are arguing about is "V'machshavtu nikeres mitoch ma'isov kamiflagei." Can you discern a fellow's intent based on his actions? If you see somebody doing something, can you sort of guess and infer his intentions? Let's see, what does that mean? So what are we talking about? Okay, well, let's say you have a fellow who's carrying in a vessel, let's say like a cup or something. Wow, is there a mosquito down there? Wow, I mean, this is I'm in a new setting over here recording, so I'm getting acquainted with my surroundings, with the floor and my ankle and the mosquitoes. But I don't think that there's mosquitoes, Baruch Hashem. Mosquitoes are a big problem. Alright, so you have a fellow and he's running with, let's say a cup, okay? And the Gemara here says Bein Hashmashos, but there's a note here that says you can actually take it out. The point is, it's not during Bein Hashmashos, but it's right before Bein Hashmashos. La'ad bule, and he's running to, dip to toivel this vessel in the mikveh. Ma'asava I dukaroyit v'azul made the yada d'bay harav shemesh. So the Tanakama says, look, again, we're saying that the machlokas here is about, can you infer a person's intention based on his actions? So Tanakama says, look, the fellow is right before Bein Hashmashos. He's holding a cup. He's running to the mikveh. No. What must be going on? He knows that the halacha is that you need to get the vessel in the mikveh before Bein Hashmashos, and if it's already Bein Hashmashos, he knows that he's going to have to wait until tomorrow night, that he's not going to be able to use this vessel. Right? So, clearly from the fact that this fellow is really hustling to get to the mikveh right before Bein Hashmashos, clearly he knows the halachas, and therefore you can leave him alone and assume that he's going to do the right thing. whereas Reb Shimon Shazuri's take on it is that no, why is he running? Because he's running, because of his work, because of whatever it is, he's in a rush. But he doesn't necessarily, we can't assume that he knows the halachas of Ben Hashmashas, and we have to be concerned that he's going to put it in the mikveh during Ben Hashmashas, and that he might use it immediately for truma, which of course would be a problem. And says Rav that I told these students of the Beis Hamedrash that b'machshavtu nikeres mitoch ma'asav duchuli amulo plige. So Rav says, look, everybody agrees that you can sort of conclude a fellow's intent based on his actions, and that if you see this fellow chappen around and he's running, he's hustling to get to the kelim mikveh, to tovel this vessel before Ben Hashmashas, he knows the halachas, and that's why he's in a rush. And therefore, you can assume that he knows that what he's doing, and there's not going to be any problems. Ki plige, where the Tanakame and Reb Shimon Shazuri argue, ki gon de itme bepachus michadasha. Well, we know this fellow. We've seen him before. Where have we seen him? Obviously, meaning not you and I in Babylon Talmud, meaning conceptually. We know the guy that we're talking about. He's a fellow who we saw in the Beis Medrash because he had a question. What was his question? His question was that a sheretz that was, now generally speaking, a dead sheretz is mitami bechadasha, the size of a lentil, right? If you have a dead sheretz the size of a lentil, it can make you tummy. It's an avatuma, it can make you a rishon l'tumah. Now, if it's less than the size of a lentil, so then it doesn't make you tummy. Now this fellow came to the Beis Hamedrash and he asked, look, a dead sheretz smaller than the size of a lentil fell on me, am I tummy or not? So now the thing is, when it comes to the size of a dead sheretz, it's not written explicitly in the Torah. It's I don't know, maybe it's halach l'Moshe Misinai, because shiurin chatzitzin u'mechitzin are halach l'Moshe Misinai. So was that even the example of the shear being halach l'Moshe Misinai? I'm not sure. Right? We had, right, okay. Anyways, fine. So now shiurim are not written explicitly in the Torah, right? It's I guess let's say it's halach l'Moshe Misinai. So ki gon de itme b'pachus michadasha. So you have this fellow. One time he became a sheretz that was smaller than a lentil fell on him. And he wanted to know, he came to the rabbis and he said, look, a sheretz that was smaller than a lentil fell on me, am I tummy or not? So the point is, he didn't know this halacha. Now it's not like it was a beferish halacha in the pasuk, like Tuma and Tara, and the fact that you need harav shemesh for in order to be able to eat truma. So the question is, right? So mar savar midahalo gamir harav shemesh nami lo gamir. So Reb Shimon Shazuri says, look, from the fact that he doesn't know about the halacha of pachus michadasha, we can assume that he also doesn't know the halacha about harav shemesh either. Umar savar ha udilo gamir ha harav shemesh gamir, whereas the Tanakama says, look, while maybe he doesn't know about the pachus michadasha, which is not written explicitly in the Torah, but harav shemesh he does know about, and therefore we can assume that he's not, if he ends up toveling this vessel in the mikveh during Ben Hashmashas, so then he will wait until the next day in order to until the next harav shemesh, the next night, in order to use the vessel. Sounds very beautiful. So the Mishnah had said that we can tovel the mikveh migav legav, from like one thing to the other. What does that mean? Tana Rabbanan. So the rabbis taught, Ketzid migav legav. What does this mean? You can go to the mikveh from gav. What does that mean? Migav legav. Arotze lasus gito al gav kado. Aha. So let's say you have a fellow who toveled a vessel already from before Yom Tov in the mikveh. He toveled the vessel in the mikveh with the intention that he was going to use the vessel for pressing olives, but he changed his mind and he says, you know what, instead I'm going to use it for making wine. So he wants to put it in the mikveh again. Okay, now, technically speaking, you don't have to put it in the mikveh again. You already put it in the mikveh. It's Torah, right? But he wants to put it in the mikveh again before he uses it for grapes. V'chado agav gito ose. Or if he has a vessel that he put in the mikveh for making wine, and then he changes his mind and he wants to use it for pressing olives, so he says, hey, let me put it in the mikveh one more time. So while generally speaking we don't put things in the mikveh on Yom Tov, the fact of the matter is he really doesn't need to be putting this into the mikveh on Yom Tov because it's already toveled, he already toveled it, for grapes or for olives, and now he wants to switch it. So you really don't need to put it in the mikveh. Therefore, it makes no difference. You're not fixing anything by putting it in the mikveh, and therefore we're saying it's no problem. So now, what does it mean that also you could tovel mechabura lechabura? So okay, if a fellow was already signed up for one chabura to eat a korban Pesach with on Pesach, and he changes his mind to eat with a different chabura, okay, fine. So then, all right, you could do that. And if he wants to go to the mikveh, then gewaldig, sounds good to me. Okay, and now we get to a new Mishnah. Beis Shammai say Beis Shammai mevi'in shlomim ve'in tzomchin alein. So Beis Shammai say that you're allowed to bring a korban shlomim. All right, and of course a korban shlomim is a korban that you bring, and part of it goes on the mizbeach, part of it goes to the kohanim, and part of it goes to you. That's why it's called shlomim. It brings peace to everybody. Everybody gets a part in it. So it says Beis Shammai, and the Gemara is going to have to explain what kind of shlomim are we talking about. So let's just leave it at that for now. You can bring korban shlomim ve'ein tzomch aleim, but you don't lean on the animals according to Beis Shammai. Have a low olis, and when it comes to korban ola, korban that is burnt entirely on the mizbeach, that you may not bring at all on Yom Tov according to Beis Shammai. Okay. Beis Hillel omer mevi'in shlomim ve'olos ve'somchin aleim. And Beis Hillel says, look, on Yom Tov you could bring shlomim, you could bring olas, you can do smicha, you can lean on them, you can do all of these things. And the Gemara is going to explain what we're talking about. Here we go. Says the Gemara, Omer Ula, says Ula machlokas b'shalmei chagiga lismoch. Okay, so says Ula that our machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel in the Mishnah regarding a korban shlomim, where we say that both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel say you're allowed to offer a korban shlomim on Yom Tov, but Beis Shammai says that you don't do smicha, and Beis Hillel says that you do smicha. So says Ula that machlokas is about shalmei chagiga, kivaldik, that when it comes to Yom Tov, when it comes to the shalosh regalim, there's a mitzvah to bring shalmei chagiga, a korban shlomim. Right, v'chagosem also chag la'Hashem, if I'm not mistaken. So from v'chagosem, I think we learn out that you offer. Oh yeah, I think we're about. Yeah, there you go. We're about to learn that out. Right, so that you bring shalmei chagiga on Yom Tov. Okay, so it's regarding these shalmei chagiga, these korban shlomim that are a mitzvah to bring on Yom Tov. So that's the machlokas between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. They both agree that you can offer the shalmei chagiga. The machlokas is, do you do smicha or not? Okay. Ve'olas ru'iyah likarib. And when it comes to the olas ru'iyah, another obligation that you have on the shalosh regalim is to bring in olas ru'iyah, korban ola that you bring on the shalosh regalim. So Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to offer that at all, and Beis Hillel says that you are allowed to offer it, and you also do smicha on it. Okay, fine. The Beis Shammai savrei michagosem also chag la'Hashem. That Beis Shammai says that the pasuk says v'chagosem to God, chagiga in olas ru'iyah lo. That when it says v'chagosem, it's a reference to the korban chagiga, that you can offer a korban chagiga on Yom Tov, but not the olas ru'iyah. When Beis Hillel savrei la'Hashem, Beis Hillel says, look, it says v'chagosem also chag la'Hashem, kol di la'Hashem, anything that's for the Eibishter. So include, right? So shalmei chagiga, olas ru'iyah, avol, nidar mu nidavis. But voluntary offerings that are not an obligation to offer on the festival, well then, divrei hakol ein kraven b'yom tiv. Everyone agrees that you would not be able to offer these korbanos on Yom Tiv. So if you just, if you decided, hey, I want to bring an offering, a sacrifice to God, so you would not be able to offer that on Yom Tiv. You'd have to wait till, bring it before Yom Tiv, after Yom Tiv, but not on Yom Tiv. And similarly, it says, Avada bar Ahava nedavos in kraven b'Yom Tiv, that these voluntary offerings are not offered on Yom Tiv, whether it's a shlomim, whether it's an ola, it's not offered on Yom Tiv. Meisvei, we have a kasha against ula from a Beitzah. Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar, lo nechelku Beis Shammai uVeis Hillel. So Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel do not argue on the following: al ola she'ena shel Yom Tiv, that if you have a voluntary korban ola, well then both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would agree she'ena kreva b'Yom Tiv, that you would not offer it on Yom Tiv. Val shlomim she'en shel Yom Tiv, and shalmei chagiga, right, the shlomim that are for Yom Tiv, she'kreven b'Yom Tiv, that mimele you can offer the shalmei chagiga on Yom Tiv. Ama nechleku, where do they argue? Al ola shehi shel Yom Tiv. Okay, so like we saw in our Mishnah, they argue about the olas re'iyah. Beis Shammai says no, Beis Hillel says yes. Ve'al shlomim she'enon shel Yom Tiv, as well as voluntary shlomim. So that's a chiddush, right? So whereas Ula says that when it comes to all sorts of voluntary offerings, whether they're shlomim, whether they're ola, Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai would agree you cannot offer them on Yom Tiv. According to this Beitzah, however, says Reb Shimon ben Elazar that Beis Hillel actually says that voluntary shlomim offerings, that you'll be able to eat from the meat on Yom Tiv, so you would be able to offer voluntary shlomim offerings on Yom Tiv. Where am I? I think about shlomim she'enon shel Yom Tiv sheBeis Shammai lo yavi. Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to bring both olas re'iyah and shalmei nedava. Beis Hillel omrim yavi, and Beis Hillel says you're allowed to offer both olas re'iyah as well as shalmei nedava. So whereas Ula says that shalmei nedava, Beis Hillel would agree that you're not allowed to offer them, says Reb Shimon ben Elazar that when it comes to shalmei nedava, you are allowed to offer them, and that's going to be a question because Reb Shimon ben Elazar is a Tana and Ula is an Amora. Okay, fine. Tritz ve'emahachi, to which the Gemara says meh. The Gemara says meh. It's not a problem. Rather, answer it in the following way. Ve'emahachi, say like this. So Amar Reb Shimon ben Elazar, says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, lo nechleku Beis Shammai uVeis Hillel, that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree upon al ola v'shlomim she'ein shel Yom Tiv she'ein kraven b'Yom Tiv, that both, so you have to answer, so explain the Beitzah like this, that what Reb Shimon ben Elazar is saying is that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that all types of nidarim and nidavos, whether shlomim, whether ola, cannot be offered on Yom Tiv, val shlomim she'ein shel Yom Tiv she'kraven b'Yom Tiv, and that shalmei chagiga are offered on Yom Tiv. Where do they argue? Al ola shehi shel Yom Tiv. They argue about olas re'iyah. Shebeis Shammai omrim lo yavi. Beis Shammai says you may not bring olas re'iyah. Uveis Hillel omrim yavi. Beis Hillel says that you may bring the korban olas re'iyah. Givaldi, very very gishmak. So we have Ula who explains our Mishnah to say that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that all sorts of nidarim and nidavos may not be offered, and that they also agree that shalmei chagiga may be offered. They only argue by olas re'iyah. Beis Shammai says no, Beis Hillel says yes. We then had a shaila from a Beitzah with Reb Shimon ben Elazar, which seemed to imply that actually the machlokes extends to shalmei nedava, that Beis Hillel says you're allowed to offer shalmei nedava, to which we said no, explain the Beitzah to be just like Ula, to which Rav Yosef says, of course, Rav Yosef with his encyclopedic knowledge of Beitzah says, Rav Yosef Amar Tanoi Shakalt Me'alma. Why are you sort of like, right, Kechomer Biyada Yotzer, right? Like we say on the Yom Noraim, Kihine Kechomer Biyada Yotzer, that we're like the clay in the hands of a craftsman, of a ceramicist. So Rav Yosef says, why are you taking this Beitzah as though it was clay in the hand of a ceramicist, my metaphor, not his, and molding it to fit Ula's opinion? It's a machlokas tanoim. Tanoi shakat me'alma. Are you just forgetting? Are you just ignoring that this is actually a machlokas tanoim, and that Reb Shimon ben Elazar merely expresses the opinion of one Tana, and Ula holds like the opinion of a different Tana that we are about to mention? Rav Yosef Amar Tanoi shakat me'alma. Rav Yosef says, have you just, taken away the Tanoim from the world? Tanoihi, because after all, machlokas Tanoim. The Tanyas, we learn in a Beitzah, Shlomim Aboim Machmas Yomtiv B'Yomtiv. So when it comes to Shalmei Chagiga, Beishamai Omim Sei Beishamai So Mechalein Me'erev Yomtiv V'Shochatam B'Yomtiv. So Beishamai, as we saw in our Mishnah, say that you're not allowed to do smicha on the Shalmei Chagiga. So rather you would lean on the Shalmei Chagiga before Yomtiv, and then you would offer the Shalmei Chagiga on Yom Tiv, according to Beis Shammai. And Beis Hillel says, look, you're allowed to slaughter the Shalmei Chagiga and do smicha on Yom Tiv. Okay, fine. Avon Nidarim, Nidavas, the Vehakol ain't craving b'Yom Tiv, but all sorts of Nidarim and Nidavas, whether Shlamim, whether Olos, would not be offered on Yom Tiv, and therefore, says of Yosef, Ula is simply holding like this Tana. Reb Shimon ben Elazar has his own opinion, which is that Beis Hillel would agree that when it comes to, Beis Hillel would also argue that when it comes to Shalmei and Nidava, that it would be able to be offered on Yom Tiv. Very, very beautiful. Bani Tanoi, Kiani Tanoi, and this machlokas Tanoim, about whether Shalmei Nidava are able to be offered on Yom Tif or not. So these Tanoim that we just discussed, these two Beitzahs, are like the following Tanoim. Vani Tanoi ki ani Tanoi de Tanya, as we learn in a Beitzah, in Mevin Toda b'Chag HaMatzos mipnei chometz shebo, that says. Okay, so we learn in a Beitzah, a Mevin Toda b'Chag HaMatzos, so it says the Beitzah that we may not offer a korban toda on Pesach. How come? Who could tell me why not? So the Gemara says mipnei chometz sheba, because there's chometz in the korban toda. Of course, the korban toda comes with 40 breads. 30 of them are matzah, are unleavened. 10 of them, however, are chometz. And therefore, because obviously the korban toda comes with chometz, so we don't offer it on Pesach, because on Pesach, obviously, chometz is not allowed. And that's also, as an aside, why we don't say the Mizmor L'Soda in Psukei de Zimra on Pesach either. V'lo ba'atzeres, we also don't offer the korban toda on Shavuos, mipnei shehu Yom Tiv, because it's Yom Tiv. So we see that basically the toda, being a shalmei, right? A toda is like a kind of like a type of shlomim, right? You eat part of it goes in the mizbeach. Does part of it go to the kohanim? I assume so. But so we're saying that it's not. But right, these korban nedavas are not offered on Yom Tiv, and therefore you cannot offer a korban toda on Shavuos either. But you would be able to offer a korban toda on Sukkos, and the Gemara is going to explain a little bit later that we're talking about Chol HaMoed Sukkos. Okay, sounds very nice. Reb Shimon Omer, says Reb Shimon, Hareyu Omer, the pasuk says B'Chag HaMatzos, B'Chag HaShavuos, B'Chag HaSukkos. Okay, so for now it sounds like what Reb Shimon is saying. We're going to explain what Reb Shimon means in a little bit, But for now, let's say that what he means is that the pasuk says v'chag hamatzos, v'chag hashvuos, v'chag hasukkos. It mentions Pesach, it mentions Shavuos, it mentions Sukkos. Kol sheba b'chag hamatzos, ba b'chag hashvuos, v'chag hasukkos. Any korban that could be offered on Pesach could also be offered on Shavuos as well as Sukkos. V'chol shelo ba b'chag hamatzos. But if an offering cannot be offered on Pesach, such as the korban toda, well then eino ba b'chag hashvuos. It's not going to be offered on Shavuos, v'chag hasukkos, nor on Sukkos. Okay, fine. And we're going to have to explain what that actually means. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon Omer, and says Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, maybe Adam Todaso b'chag Sukkos, a fellow can bring a korban toda on Sukkos, v'yotze ba'idei chovaso, and he can fulfill his obligation, mishum simcha, and by bringing his korban toda, he can also fulfill his obligation for simcha, right? There's a, right? V'samachta b'chagecha, in simcha ela b'basar, by b'sar korbanos. So by bringing his korban toda, he could be yotze his chova of simcha, ve'ein yotze ba mishum chagiga, but he's not yotze his chiyuv to bring a shalmei chagiga. Okay, that sounds very nice. And as Rashi points out, because the chagiga is davar shebechovahu, v'chol davar shebechova eino ba'el min achulin, because the chagiga is an obligation that you have to bring a shalmei chagiga on the festival, and because it's an obligation, it has to come from chulin, and a korban toda is already you makdish it as a korban, so it's not chulin. Okay. Omer Mar, we said earlier, we just said basically in the Beitzah that we just quoted, in mevi'in toda b'chag hamatzos, we do not offer a korban toda on Pesach mipnei chometz sheba, because there's chometz. Pshita, isn't that obvious? If there's chometz with the korban, you can't bring it on the festival where chometz is like the worst thing possible. So Amr Vada Breda Rav Yitzchak v'Amrila Rav Shmuel bar Abba. Okay. Hocha bar Abba also askinan. Ho. The chiddush here is not to teach me about Pesach. Obviously, you wouldn't bring korban toda on Pesach. We're talking about on Erev Pesach. You don't offer a korban toda on Erev Pesach, because a korban toda you can eat the day that you offer it as well as the following night. So if you offer a korban toda on the 14th of Nisan, so then technically speaking, you would be able to eat it the entire day on Erev Pesach as well as that night, which is Seder night. But obviously you won't be able to eat it because it's chametz. So therefore, because of in Mivin Kachim Beis Apsul, and we're saying that according to the Tanakama, we're saying that in Mivin Kachim Beis Apsul, we're not allowed to sort of prematurely force Kachim to become pasul. And in this case, since already, what was it, after 4 hours or whatever it is, you're already not allowed to eat chametz on Erev Pesach, so you're like prematurely making these breads pasul. Because essentially, while technically speaking, you can eat these breads all day and the following night, but because it's Erev Pesach, you're cutting down the amount of time that you have to eat these breads, and you're saying that, prematurely, you're essentially deeming them pasul. So that's not allowed. And therefore, what we're saying is that we even don't offer a korban toda on Erev Pesach. V'lo batzeres mipnei shu Yom Tiv. Okay, and not on Atzeres because it's Yom Tiv. Kasov v'nedarim v'nedavos ein craving b'Yom Tiv. Or because he holds that nedarim and nedavos, all nedarim and all nedavos are not offered on Yom Tiv, and therefore you can't offer a korban toda on Shavuos. Avol maybe adam todasu b'chag Sukkos, but he may offer his korban toda on Sukkos emas. When are we talking about on Yom Tiv? Obviously, we're not talking about on the first day of Sukkot on Yom Tiv, because we just said that you're not allowed to offer korban toda on Yom Tiv. That's why you're not allowed to offer it on Shavuos. Rather, what it's saying is that on Chol HaMoed Sukkot you can offer a korban toda, not on Chol HaMoed Pesach because it's chometz, not on Shavuos because it's only one day and it's Yom Tiv, but on Chol HaMoed Sukkot you can offer a korban toda. Okay. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon Areu Omer. 1 second. The pasuk says, "B'chag hamatzos v'chag hashvuos v'chag hasukkos. Kol sheba b'chag hamatzos, ba b'chag hashvuos v'chag hasukkos." Any korban that can be offered on Pesach can also be offered on Shavuos and Sukkos. V'chol shelo ba b'chag hamatzos. But any offering that you're not allowed to offer on Pesach, such as a korban toda, eino ba b'chag hashvuos v'chag hasukkos, you cannot offer on Shavuos and Sukkos, which means that you cannot offer a korban toda on Sukkos, according to Reb Shimon. Maskefla Reb Zera. Reb Zera says, I don't understand. Hashta salusi misaltinon on Chol Hamoed, you can even like chop down trees if you want. Right? If you need to make a fire or something, you can even chop down trees on Chol Hamoed. So what? I could chop down trees, but nedarim and nedavos mibaya. If I could chop down trees on Chol Hamoed, obviously I could bring a korban on Chol Hamoed. So says Reb Zera, it doesn't make sense to say that Reb Shimon is saying that you're not allowed to bring a korban toda on Chol Hamoed Sukkos. If I could chop down trees, I could bring a korban toda. So it says Abai, look, Reb Shimon agrees that when it comes to offering a korban toda on Sukkos, you can offer a korban toda on Sukkos. If you can chop down trees, you could definitely offer a korban toda. Ki plige, what they are arguing about is l'mekam olei b'val ta'acher. What they're arguing about is bal ta'acher. What's bal ta'acher? Bal ta'acher is the obligation that you shouldn't take too long to offer your korban, right? So if you say that, I'm going to bring a korban shlamim. I want to bring a sacrifice to God, I'm going to bring a korban shlamim. Well, bring the korban shlamim. No, get your act together, bring the korban shlamim. Don't wait 5 years. So rather, you have 3 regalim. After 3 regalim, then it's already late. Tanakama sover shalosh regalim amar achmon afilu shelo kesidron. The Tanakama's opinion is that the 3 festivals, they can even be out of order, right? So meaning technically it's Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos, but it says the Tanakama, it can even be Sukkos, Pesach, Shavuos, whatever it is. So for example, according to the Tanakama, if you before Sukkos you say I'm going to bring a korban shlamim when I go to be Ola Regel, well then you really better chaparayim and bring that korban that you said you were going to bring on Sukkos, because guess what? If you don't bring that, or if you're going to say that, right, if you're going to bring a korban toda, right, so if you need to bring a korban toda, let's say, before Sukkos, well then you better chaparayim, because as we said, you're not going to be able to offer it on Pesach, because we don't offer korban toda on Pesach, and because it's chametz, and we don't offer it on Shavuos either, because it's Yom Tif. So the Chacham would say, look, if before Sukkos you say that you're going to bring a korban toda, well, either you better bring it on Sukkos, or you're going to have to make a special trip to Jerusalem in order to offer that korban toda, because they say that it doesn't need to be in order. It doesn't have to be Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkos. It can even be Sukkos, Pesach, Shavuos. And therefore, if Sukkos passes and you don't offer that korban toda, and then Memele, Pesach is going to pass because you can't offer a korban toda on Pesach because of chametz, and Shavuos is going to pass because you can't offer a korban toda on the Yom Tov of Shavuos. So then, if the next Sukkos comes around and you still hadn't offered your korban toda, well then that was 3 regalim: Sukkos, Pesach, and Shavuos that you didn't offer your korban toda, and it's going to be a problem of bal ta'acher, of delaying offering your korban. So therefore, according to the Chachamim, they say that it can be out of order, right? So they say Tanakama Sover, according to Tanakama, Shalosh regalim amar achmano, you could have 3 regalim afilu shelo kesidron, even if they're out of order. Reb Shimon Sover, whereas Reb Shimon holds kesidron in, shelo kesidron lo. Reb Shimon says that actually they have to be in order. And therefore, going back to our example, if a fellow says before Sukkos that he's going to bring a korban toda, well then he doesn't have to dafka bring it on this Sukkos. He can even bring it the next Sukkos, because if he misses this Sukkos, it doesn't yet count, because you have to have it in order. Once he gets to Pesach, now the clock starts ticking, and then you have Shavuos, and obviously he can't bring his korban toda on Pesach because of the chometz, not on Shavuos because it's Yom Tiv. And then coming the next Sukkos, you better chaparayim, because after the second, after that Sukkos, it's already going to be too late. So according to Reb Shimon, they dafka need to be in order. First Pesach, and then Shavuos, and only then Sukkos. And therefore, the way that Reb Shimon learns, right, that anything that's offered on Chag HaMatzos, anything that's offered on Pesach, can be offered on Shavuos and Sukkos, and if it's not offered on Pesach, then it's not offered on Shavuos and Sukkos. You understand it like this, that anything that's offered on Pesach, meaning that if you say before Pesach, which is the first in order, right? Because Reb Shimon says it has to be in order. So if you say before Pesach, I'm going to bring a korban toda, right? Or I'm going to bring a korban in general. So then, well, let's say our korban toda, right? So if you say that before Pesach, actually no, let's just say it's a regular korban, right? So if he says before Pesach, hey, I'm going to bring a korban shlam as a nedava, as a voluntary offering. So he says this before Pesach. Well then, Kol Shaba b'Pesach. So then already comes Pesach, he should bring this korban. And if he doesn't bring the korban, so then you can bring it on Shavuos. You can bring it on Sukkos, right? Kol Abba b'Chag HaMatzos, right? It can also be brought in Chag Shavuos and Chag Sukkos. I.e., if you had already made the neder or the nedava before Pesach, well then you have Pesach to offer it, and Shavuos, and Sukkos, and if you don't chaperayim, so then it's already Bal Ta'acher. But B'kol she'ena kreva b'chag a-Pesach, but if it's not offered on Pesach, i.e., you hadn't yet made the pledge yet before Pesach, you only made the pledge after Pesach. Well, if that's the case, you don't have to worry about Shavuos, you don't even have to worry about the next Sukkos, because the clock is only going to start ticking the following Pesach, so that you then have 3 consecutive, Pesach, and then Shavuos, and then Sukkos. So that's how to understand Reb Shimon's opinion. And then Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon Omer, it says Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon, Mevi Adam Todasu b'Chag HaSukkos. A fellow could bring his korban toda on Sukkos. Emas, at what point on Sukkos? Ilema b'chul shamoid. If we're going to say that we're talking about Chol HaMoed, Hanu Tanakama, that's what the Tanakama said. The Tanakama said that you're allowed to offer a korban toda on Sukkos, and we said it's talking about Chol HaMoed. El b'Yom Tiv, rather the chiddush of Reb Shimon ben Elazar is that you can even offer did I get the name right? No, Reb Elazar Reb Shimon. That according to Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, you can even offer the korban toda on the Yom Tov of Sukkot, because Nedar Menudavos craven be Yom Tov, and he holds that Nedar Menudavos can be offered on Sukkot, on Yom Tov. So whereas the Tanakama said that Nedar Menudavos cannot be offered on Yom Tov, Reb Elazar Reb Shimon says that Nedar Menudavos can be offered on Yom Tif, and that is how it ties in to the machlokas that we saw earlier between Ula and, between the Tana, like Ula, and Reb Shimon ben Elazar, that, can shlamim, at least, that are Nedar Menudavos be offered on Yom Tif or not. Frekti Gemara, Umayshna Chag HaSukkos dinokat. How come Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon Davka mentioned Sukkos, right? Why did he Davka say that you can offer the korban toda on Sukkos? What about Shavuos? What about Pesach? So Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon, the Tanya, as we learn in the Beitzah, Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon, Lo Ye'omer Chag HaSukkos Sheba HaKosov Medaber. That when it says B'chag HaMatzos, B'chag HaShavuos, B'chag HaSukkos, it doesn't really need to say Chag HaSukkos, because it's already talking about it. If we look at the context of that pasuk, it's already talking about Sukkos. So why does it say the Sukkos? So Lomer Nemar, Lomer Shezeh Achron. So it says Reb Shimon to Davka say that Sukkos is the last, right? That it has to be in order. It has to be Pesach, and then Shavuos, and then Sukkos. That they have to be in order, like we saw as his opinion. Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon Omer, Lomer Shezeh Gorem, to say that this causes. So this is super interesting. What it means is, so this is an opinion that we haven't seen yet, right, out of the different opinions, right? So we saw the opinion of the Tanakama, which was that they don't have to be in order, that it can even be, Sukkos and then Pesach and then Shavuos. Reb Shimon says they have to be in order, Pesach, Shavuos, and then Sukkos. Says Reb Elazar, Reb Shimon, that actually it's just Sukkos, right? When it says B'chag HaMatzos, B'chag HaShavuos, B'chag HaSukkos, why does it say Sukkos? It's already talking about Sukkos. What it's saying is that once Sukkos passes, you're over on Bal Ta'acher, which means even if you just said that you're going to bring a korban before Sukkos, right before Sukkos, you said, I'm going to bring a korban. Well, guess what? You better chop around on Sukkos, because after Sukkos, Memele, it's already Bal Ta'acher. You don't necessarily have 3 regalim. You have until after Sukkos. That's what Reb Elazar Reb Shimon says. Wow. Friends, that was a jam-packed daf on daf Yutes of Masechta Beitzah. So friends, what do we learn? So first, we learned about bringing things to the mikveh, came to the mikveh on Erev Yom Tov. We said don't bring things to the mikveh on Erev Yom Tov Bein Hashmashos, during sort of this in-between time, Safek Yom, Safek Laila, because we don't bring Kalim to the mikveh on Yom Tif, and because we're not sure if it's Yom Tif or not, so it might taka be Yom Tif. Fine. We had the interesting opinion of Reb Shimon Shazuri, who says that even during the week, you shouldn't be taking anything to the mikveh during Bein Hashmashos, because if they're Kohanim, and they have to have Harav Shemesh, well then it can be, a problem if it's during Bein Hashmashos, you can have to wait till the next night. And it says Rava that what we're talking about over here is a situation where we have a person who in the past has come to the Beis HaMedrash to ask about if a sheretz that's less than a lentil is mitame. And because he doesn't know, the question is, well, if he doesn't know about that halacha, do we also have to be concerned that he doesn't know about the halacha of Bein Hashmashos, about Harav Shemesh? And therefore, the question is, if he's sort of hustling before to run to, or if he's even sort of going to the mikveh to tovel something during Bein Hashmashos, do we have to stop him and say, hey, don't do that, because we have to be concerned that he's going to end up immediately using it for truma? Or can we assume that even though he didn't know about the lentil, but he knows about the Harav Shemesh because it's meforish in the Torah? Then we saw a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel with regards to which korbanos you're allowed to offer on Yom Tif. So according to Ula, he says, look, when it comes to Shalmei Chagiga, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel say you're allowed to offer them. When it comes to any types of Nedarim and Nedavis, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel agree that you're not allowed to offer them. The machlokas is by Olas Re'iyah. Beis Shammai says no, Beis Hillel says yes. We then saw the opinion of Shimon ben Elazar, who actually says that additionally they argue about Shalmei Nedava, a korban shlamim that's a voluntary offering, that says Shimon ben Elazar that Beis Hillel says that you'd be allowed to offer those as well. Okay, and then we tied that into another machlokas that sort of brought out the machlokas between the Tanakama and Shimon ben Elazar, Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, about can you actually offer Nidar Menedavos and Yom Tov. Tanakam over there said no. Reb Elazar Reb Shimon said yes. And then we along the way saw another very interesting machlokas, which is about the halacha of Bal Ta'acher, about when a fellow says I'm going to bring a korban, so we don't want him to we want him to chaparine and to offer it and not to dilly dally. So according to the Tanakama, these you have to if 3 festivals pass and you haven't yet offered your korban, then you violate the halacha of the lav of Bal Ta'acher, and these don't have to be in order. It can even be, for example, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuos. Reb Shimon says they have to be in order, so it would have to be Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. And if you made the neder before Sukkot, well then you have some time, because it would have to first be Pesach and then Shavuos and then another Sukkot before you would be violating Bal Ta'acher. And then we saw the very interesting opinion of Reb Elazar Reb Shimon, who actually says that no, once Sukkot passes, you're over on Bal Ta'acher. Whether that was the first regel, whether it was the third regel, it doesn't matter. Once Sukkot passes, you are over on Bal Ta'acher. Friends, that was Daf Yud Tes, Daf 19 of Masechta Beya. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Peace out.